paperwork came through on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays at Firebase Ardmore were resupply days. I had 4 crates of MREs to log by 1400. The transfer sheet landed on top of the stack, 1 page, Colonel Hatch's signature at the bottom, and a fitness designation I'd only seen stamped on men who'd come back from something they couldn't name. Psychologically non-deployable. Reassigned to supply operations, effective immediately. Her name was Corporal Reyes. I didn't know that name then. What I knew was what the guys in my depot knew. That a female sniper had contradicted Hatch's after-action account in front of the Brigade S3, that Hatch had not taken it quietly, and that the paperwork had moved fast. Somebody said she claimed a second shooter had been on the eastern ridge during the Mirabad contact. That Hatch's report had the geometry wrong, that men had died in the wrong sector because of it. I didn't know if any of that was true. What I knew was that she was now my problem, and I had 40 crates to count. She showed up that afternoon with a single kit bag, medium height, lean, kind of quiet that isn't shyness. It's discipline. She had a long scar along her left forearm that the men noticed immediately, and one of my corporals made a remark about it I won't repeat. She looked at him the way you look at a fly that's landed on your sleeve, and then she asked me where she should stow her gear. That was it. No argument, no explanation, no request for any kind of justice. She drew her assignment, inventory and manifest verification, the most tedious work we had, and she did it. For 3 weeks I watched her. She was the first one at the crates in the morning, and the last one to log off at night. She caught 2 inventory discrepancies in the first week that would have shorted the eastern outposts on ammunition. She never mentioned them as anything special. She filed the corrections and moved on. When the men made more remarks, and some of them did, because word had gotten around, she absorbed it the way stone absorbs rain. None of it went in. None of it came back out as anger or complaint. I started to wonder what exactly had happened up in the S3's briefing room, and whether the man who'd signed that transfer sheet had known what he was throwing away. The night of the 15th was clear and cold, a half moon over the Kunar Valley, and the first RPG hit the North Tower at 0217. I came off my cot into a world that had already reorganized itself around the sound of small arms fire on 3 sides. The duty officer was shouting coordinates that didn't add up. The assault was coming from the ridge above us, not the valley floor, meant the pre-positioned defensive lines were facing the wrong direction. Comms to battalion were already cut. I got to the command post in time to hear Hatch tell his XO that the north ridge was impassable at night and that we would hold the perimeter walls until air support arrived. Estimated time on station 4 hours minimum. We had 43 personnel inside the wire. I went back through the depot to grab my rifle. The depot was dim, 2 of the overhead fixtures blown from the concussion of the second RPG, and in the half-light, I nearly tripped over a crate that had shifted off its shelf. I got my hands on my M4, checked the mag by feel, turned toward the door. That's when I saw the armory cage was open. She had taken the MK-13, the long gun, the one we kept for the range qualification once a month. The one nobody at Firebase Ardmore had a current sniper designation to operate. She had taken it and a bandolier of match-grade rounds, and she was already gone. I looked at the cage for a long moment. Then I looked north, toward the ridge. The firing up there started 11 minutes later. I can tell you what I saw from the depot roof isn't much. Muzzle flash at a distance, single shots spaced with a patience that had no business existing in the middle of what was happening to us. I can tell you what the men on the north wall reported. That the RPG teams on the upper ridge went quiet one by one. That the flanking fire from the eastern draw stopped at around 0340. That by 0410, the assault had broken apart, and the fighters were pulling back up, far slope. I can tell you that not one of those shots was a lucky angle or a close-range scramble. Positions she engaged were between 800 and 2,200 meters out, in the dark, on terrain she had never been assigned to study, with a weapon she hadn't fired since the day someone decided she wasn't fit to fire it. 11 confirmed. 43 personnel inside the wire, all of them alive at sunrise. She came down off the ridge at Equino 5:30, the MK-13 slung, jacket dark along the shoulder from where she'd been prone, on the frozen rock, for 3.5 hours. There was a cut above her left eye she hadn't had the night before. Rock fragment, probably, from a near miss she hadn't bothered to report. She walked to the armory cage, racked the rifle, signed it back in on the log sheet. Neat, legible, the correct form number, and went to the depot to start the morning inventory. I watched her do it. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. The after-action debrief was at 1100 in the command post. Colonel Hatch ran it. His S2 read the shot log aloud. Position, distance, time of engagement, confirmed effect, one after another down the list. 11 lines. The room was quiet in the particular way rooms get quiet when the numbers don't match what anyone expected. At 2,200 meters in darkness, the last entry read, confirmed kill, single round, MK13 Mod 1, match grade. Hatch sat at the head of the table for a long time after that. I was standing at the back of the room. I had no real business being there, but nobody told me to leave. I watched him read the log a second time. I watched him look at the weapon designation on the header, and then look at the reassignment order that was still in the left folder of his binder, the one with his own signature at the bottom. He stood up. He didn't call her name. He didn't make a speech. He came to attention, full attention, heels together, the way officers do when the moment demands it and nothing else will serve. And he saluted, across the table. She was sitting 4 seats down, still in the jacket she'd worn on the ridge, dried mud along the sleeve. She looked at him for a moment with no expression I could read. Then she came to attention in her chair, and returned it. Nobody in that room made a sound. Not the XO, not the S2, not the 4 Marines who'd been on the north wall and come in to give their accounts. The quiet lasted long enough that I became aware of the wind outside, the way it moved through the gap in the northern peaks, the sound it made against the tin roof of the command post. Hatch reached into his binder and removed the reassignment order. He set it on the table in front of him. He didn't say what he was going to do with it. He didn't need to. I've thought about that room a lot in the years since. Not about what she did on the ridge. That part is documented, filed, and won't change. What I think about is the moment before he stood up. The moment when a man looked at a list of 11 entries and understood, with no room left for argument, that he had thrown away the best shot in that theater because she'd embarrassed him in a briefing room, that the geometry she'd described had been correct, that the men who died in the wrong sector had died, at least in part, because he had needed to be right more than he had needed to listen. She never said any of that in the room. She didn't have to. Processed her reinstatement paperwork the following morning. Her sniper designation restored, effective the date of the engagement. Call sign, her unit record, Ghost Thorn. I hadn't known the call sign before. None of us in supply had known it. It was there in her file the whole time. Right below a commendation she'd never mentioned, and a confirmed distance that made the Mirabad engagement look like a practice shot. Typed the paperwork carefully. I made sure every line was correct. It was the least I could do.